I'm 52 years old, and for most of my life I've played it safe. Love, to me, was steady and predictable, like the ticking of a reliable old clock. I married young, raised 2 children, and poured myself into the life we built together. I never looked twice at anyone else, never strayed from the path I thought was right. I believed if you did everything right, nothing could shake the ground beneath you. But I was wrong. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. The first time I noticed the leak under the kitchen sink, it was small, barely more than a few droplets clinging to the pipe after I ran the dishwasher. I wiped them up with an old towel and thought nothing of it. But a few days later, I found a puddle creeping along the tile, soaking into the edges of the rug I kept by the sink. That's when I knew I needed help. My husband Greg was out of town for work, some conference in Chicago. I hated when he traveled. The house always felt bigger, emptier, especially now that both our kids were grown and living hours away. I could have called a plumber, sure, but Greg had always trusted his best friend, Mike, for things like this. He's practically family, Greg would say, and he was right. Mike had been in Greg's life since college. He was at our wedding. He held our son when he was born. So I texted him, "Hey Mike, small leak under the sink, any chance you can stop by sometime this week?" His reply came almost immediately, "I can be there in 20. Sit tight." I didn't have time to overthink it. I brushed my hair out of my face, checked my reflection in the hallway mirror just to make sure I didn't look too disheveled, and tried to ignore the weird flutter in my chest. When Mike knocked, I opened the door and found him standing there with his usual warm smile and a toolbox in hand. He looked the same as always, rugged, a little grayer than the last time I saw him, but still carrying that quiet confidence that made people naturally trust him. "Hey Caroline," he said, "let me take a look." "Thanks for coming, sorry to bother you." "It's no bother. Better I fix it now before it becomes a swimming pool under your cabinets." He crouched down immediately, head under the sink, flashlight in one hand. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching him work. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of wood or the distant hum of the fridge. "Looks like a loose valve," he murmured, voice echoing inside the cabinet. "Easy fix." He pulled out a wrench and started tightening something. I found myself staring at the back of his neck, the way a few curls had escaped his collar, the way his shirt clung to his back when he leaned in. I looked away, suddenly embarrassed in my own thoughts. What was wrong with me? "You okay, Caroline?" he asked, looking up. "Yeah. Yes, of course. Just tired." He pulled himself upright, brushing his hands on a rag. "You've been quiet lately. Everything all right?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone asked how I was, not in a casual, polite way, but in a way that meant they actually wanted to know. "I'm fine," I said automatically, but my voice didn't sound convincing, even to me. He tilted his head. "You sure? You look like you're carrying a lot." I let out a small laugh, trying to push away the emotions suddenly swelling in my chest. "It's just been a strange year, that's all. The kids moved out. Greg's been traveling more. And the house gets so quiet sometimes, I can hear myself thinking." He didn't smile. He just looked at me with those steady eyes that had always unnerved me a little, not because they were intense, but because they saw too much. "I know what you mean," he said softly. "After my divorce, I used to sit on the couch at night and just listen to the silence. It can get real loud when you don't have anyone to talk to." I nodded, feeling the air thicken between us. Not in a threatening way. It was gentle but heavy. "You ever feel like you're disappearing?" I asked. He didn't respond right away. Then he reached over, slowly, and placed his hand over mine on the counter. "Only when I start pretending I'm fine." My breath caught. His hand was warm, familiar, but it felt different this time, like something unspoken had suddenly come to the surface, something neither of us had prepared for. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Instead, I looked down at our hands, then up at his face, and for a moment, just a moment, the world outside the kitchen faded. The ticking clock on the wall, the buzzing refrigerator, even the dripping faucet, all of it disappeared. There was only the quiet between us. Mike spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to keep pretending, Caroline. Not with me." And that was when my heart skipped, stopped for a second. Because I knew then something was changing, something I couldn't undo. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying that moment in the kitchen over and over again, the way his hand felt over mine, the quiet truth in his eyes, the way my breath caught when he said my name like it meant something more. Greg called later that evening. I put on my usual voice, cheerful and composed. "Hey, hon, how's Chicago?" "Cold, boring. Full of guys trying to one-up each other in sales projections." He laughed. "How's home?" "Fine. Quiet." Mike stopped by to fix the leak. "Good guy," Greg said, not thinking twice. "Told you he'd take care of it." Yeah, he did. In more ways than he knew. After I hung up, I stood at the kitchen sink, wiping at a perfectly dry counter, trying to settle my nerves. I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Guilt, maybe. But more than that, it was something else, a sense that someone had seen me, really seen me, not as Greg's wife, not as mom, not as the woman who makes sure the laundry is folded and the bills are paid, but as Caroline. Just Caroline. The next morning I tried to forget. I kept busy. I walked the dog, went to the grocery store, cleaned out the guest room closet. But my thoughts kept drifting back to that kitchen, the way his hand covered mine, the way time paused like it was holding its breath. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't need to. He texted first, "Hey, you okay?" Just those 3 words, but they hit me like a wave. I stared at the message longer than I should have before replying. "I don't know. Maybe. Can we talk?" He showed up that afternoon. No toolbox this time, just him in a soft gray flannel shirt and jeans. He looked different, or maybe I just saw him differently now. I let him in and made us tea, because it felt like the only thing I could do with my hands. We sat on the back porch. The sun was low, casting long golden streaks across the yard. The air was crisp but not cold, the kind of autumn breeze that carries the scent of dry leaves and something faintly sweet. "I didn't mean to cross a line," he said, cupping the mug in both hands. I saw something in your face, Caroline. Something I recognized." I nodded, eyes down. "You didn't cross a line. Or maybe you did, but I didn't stop you." Silence again, the kind of silence that doesn't need filling, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket when the world feels too loud. "I've been lonely," I said after a moment. "Not unhappy, not exactly, but just fading. Like I've been living behind a pane of glass, watching everything go by but not touching it." He looked at me carefully, as if weighing each word before saying anything. "I think we both have." There was something comforting in that, in knowing I wasn't the only one sleepwalking through my days. But there was also a danger to it, like recognizing a hunger in someone else that mirrors your own. "I don't want to mess anything up," I said quietly. "This life I've built, it may not be thrilling, but it's solid, safe." "Yeah," he said, "but sometimes safe can start to feel like a cage." I looked at him then, really looked. There was something behind his eyes, regret, maybe, or longing, or both. "Do you remember that summer at Lake Lanier?" he asked suddenly. "The one where the 4 of us rented that cabin?" I smiled, caught off guard. "Of course. You and Greg spent the whole time trying to beat each other at fishing. And you spent the whole time reading by the water, he said, smiling too. You were always there when I got back, bare feet in the sand, hair pulled up in that messy bun. I felt a warmth crawl up my chest. I didn't think you noticed. I noticed everything. I didn't know what to say to that. It felt like stepping onto a narrow bridge in the fog, one step and I'd be somewhere I couldn't return from. He leaned in slightly, his voice softer now. I'm not asking for anything, Caroline. I'm not trying to start something reckless. But if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who remembers who you are, I'm here. No judgment, no expectations. That part broke something open in me, because the truth was, I wanted someone to remember who I used to be. Before motherhood, before middle age crept in, before I became invisible even in my own home. We sat there a while longer, sipping tea as the light faded, and when he left, he didn't try to touch me again. He just squeezed my hand once and gave me a look that said everything he couldn't say out loud. When the door closed behind him, I stood in the quiet and placed my hand over my chest. It was still beating, but it didn't feel the same anymore. The days that followed were strange, not dramatic, not full of chaos or confrontation, just quietly different. Like waking up and finding the furniture has been rearranged just slightly. You can still move around, but something feels off. I went back to my routines, morning coffee on the porch, tidying the kitchen, walking Sadie down Maple Street and back. Greg came home from Chicago 2 days later, kissed me on the cheek, told me he missed me, and unpacked like nothing had changed. But I had. I started noticing things I used to ignore, the way Greg didn't really look at me when he talked, how dinner conversation was more about logistics than connection, how we used to laugh, really laugh, over silly things, and now we just reported our days to each other like coworkers in a shared office. I didn't blame him. This wasn't his fault. We just drifted. And once you start to see the distance, it's impossible to unsee it. Mike didn't reach out again, and I didn't message him either, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed space to understand what was happening inside me. Then came Friday. Greg had dinner plans with a client, some last-minute thing he couldn't get out of. I said I didn't mind, and I meant it. But as soon as I heard his car back out of the driveway, a strange ache filled the house again. I poured a glass of wine, turned on some soft music, and sat on the back porch under a throw blanket. The moon was high, glowing behind thin clouds, and the night air carried a scent of firewood and pine. I didn't mean to text Mike, I really didn't. But my fingers moved before my better judgment caught up. Are you awake? It only took a few seconds. Yeah. Everything okay? I hesitated, then typed, I don't know. Can you come over? When he arrived, he didn't knock loudly, just a soft tap at the back door. I opened it, and there he was, hair tousled, jacket unzipped, eyes calm but questioning. I'm sorry, I whispered, stepping aside. You don't have to be. We sat down on the porch again. No tea this time, just us, wrapped in quiet. I can't stop thinking about what you said, I admitted. That you noticed everything. That you saw me. I don't think I realized how badly I needed someone to say that. He nodded slowly. I meant it. I know. We didn't touch, didn't reach out. The space between us was warm but careful, like two candles burning side by side. I turned toward him, my voice trembling just enough to notice. What if I told you I felt something that day in the kitchen? He looked at me without blinking. I'd say I did too. That truth sat between us for a moment, simple, quiet, undeniable. But we can't, Mike. I'm married. I know, he said. And I'm not asking you to do anything that would hurt your life. I want you to know that you're not alone. That you matter. My throat tightened. I feel selfish even needing that. It's not selfish to want to be seen or held or remembered. His words cut through me, not painfully, but with clarity, like someone wiping a fogged mirror. And then, very gently, he reached over, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. It wasn't seductive. It wasn't dramatic. It was tender. It was kind. And it made my breath hitch in a way I hadn't felt in years. I didn't kiss him. He didn't ask me to. But as he stood to leave, he turned to me with a quiet intensity in his voice. Caroline, whatever happens next, promise me one thing. What? Don't let yourself disappear again. Then he was gone, and I stood alone in the doorway, the night curling around my shoulders like a question I didn't yet know how to answer. Because the truth was, something had changed. And now I had to decide what to do with it. The next morning, everything looked the same, sunlight on the kitchen tile, Greg's coffee mug on the counter, the low hum of the morning news on the TV. But I wasn't the same. I moved through the house like I was visiting it for the first time. Familiar walls, familiar photos, a life carefully built now under quiet inspection. Every drawer, every cushion, every word between Greg and me suddenly felt more fragile, more deliberate. We ate breakfast together at the table, like we always did when he wasn't traveling. Scrambled eggs, sliced melon, a soft clinking of forks and spoons that filled the silence we didn't address. He was reading something on his phone, chuckling to himself. You okay? I asked. He looked up, surprised I spoke first. Yeah, just something dumb one of the guys texted. You? I'm thinking. He raised an eyebrow. About what? I hesitated. About us. He set his phone down. What about us? And there it was, the opening, the moment. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man I had shared decades with, a man I respected, cared for. But somewhere along the way, the warmth between us had cooled. We'd stopped asking the deep questions, stopped checking in on each other's souls. I don't think we talk anymore, I said quietly. Not really. Not about anything that matters. Greg blinked. Where's this coming from? I don't know. Maybe I've just been feeling lost lately. Like I'm living someone else's life. Like I'm disappearing in a routine that used to feel comforting but now just feels numb. He stared at me, his face unreadable. I worried he'd get defensive, shut down. But instead, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. You're right, he said. I've felt it too. That surprised me. Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't know what to do with it, he admitted. We've been so focused on keeping things together, work, bills, the kids, we stopped focusing on each other. I nodded, grateful for his honesty but still carrying the weight of the last few days. There's someone who made me realize it, I said softly. Nothing happened, nothing inappropriate, but he made me feel seen, and I think that scared me. Greg looked at me for a long time, and then slowly, he reached across the table and took my hand. I don't want to lose you, Caroline, he said. If you're hurting, I want to understand. I want to do better. Tears stung the corners of my eyes, not because it was perfect or fixed, but because he meant it. Because somewhere inside both of us, the spark hadn't died. It had just gone quiet. We talked for hours that day, about everything. About how we used to feel and how we wanted to feel again. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't dramatic. It was two people choosing to show up, finally, honestly. Later that evening, when the house was quiet again, I stood by the kitchen window, looking out toward the edge of the yard, and I thought of Mike. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over his name. Then I set it down and walked outside. The air was cool, soft. The wind rustled the trees gently. I whispered into the dusk, knowing he wouldn't hear it but needing to say it anyway, thank you for waking me up. Because what Mike did under my roof wasn't about romance. It wasn't about crossing lines or breaking vows. It was about reminding me I was still here, still vibrant, still worthy of being seen. And that reminder changed everything. Not just for a moment, but for